Good day. You are looking live at Launch Pad 0A at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport in Wallops Island, Virginia, at the Wallops Flight Facility, where, for the second day in a row, an Orbital ATK Antares rocket stands fully fueled, ready to lift off about 29 minutes from now on a resupply run to the International Space Station. Everything has been going extremely well with the preparations for today's second launch attempt for Antares on this commercial resupply mission for Orbital ATK to deliver almost 7,400 pounds of supplies and scientific experiments for the Expedition 53 crew on board the Orbital Outpost. At this hour, the International Space Station, which is the destination for the Cygnus resupply craft dubbed the SS Gene Cernan, is flying 251 statute miles over the southern Indian Ocean. At the time of launch, about 28.5 minutes from now, the space station will be over the western Pacific, flying just to the northeast of New Guinea. At the Range Control Center at the Wallops Flight Facility, the Orbital ATK team of launch officials and engineers carefully monitoring all of their systems. The launch director, Kurt Eberly, just conducted a poll of all of his positions. Everyone is go for launch, as they are at the Orbital ATK Flight Control Room in Dulles, Virginia, where the flight controllers there, under the direction of Mission Director Ken Peake, will be taking over control of the mission of Cygnus to the International Space Station at the time of spacecraft separation from the upper stage of the second stage of the Antares rocket, 9 minutes, 6 seconds after launch. Here in the flight control room at the International Space Station Flight Control Room at Mission Control here in Houston, the flight controllers are taking a quick break before they're back on console for the terminal countdown of today's operations. We'll be moving into a planned built-in 10-minute hold at the T-minus 10-minute mark into the countdown about 6.5 minutes from now. Joining me on console, as she was yesterday with my colleague Brandy Dean, is Amanda Davis, who is the Orbital ATK Director of Program Management. Amanda, good morning and welcome back with us.
Good morning. How are you today?
We're good. Everything is on track. Yesterday, just to recap, the countdown was as smooth as silk. Everything went by the book until the final minute or so when an airplane wandered into the launch zone, if you will, right off the coast of Virginia, and a scrub of the launch was called. So from that point on, fill us in on what the launch control team down in Wallops had to do to safe the vehicle and prepare for today's second launch attempt.
Okay, well, the first thing we have to do is safe the vehicle, which means that the last steps that we do is to fully arm the vehicle and get ready for those one-time events that happen during launch. The next thing that happens is that we have to defuel. So all that liquid oxygen and kerosene that we've loaded into the first stage, we have to detank that. It's just more safe and stable on the pad than it is in the vehicle. Once we've done that, we'll make sure that the internal power that was applied for the batteries that are used during flight, we go to external power, and then make sure those batteries are nice and topped off for today.
Very good. And as you can see, today's launch is scheduled about 40 minutes after sunrise down at Wallops Island. Everything continues to go very, very smoothly. No issues reported. In a weather briefing that took place about an hour and a half ago, the launch control team down in Wallops was told that unlike yesterday, which was a pristine day in terms of visibility, there are some cirrus clouds that have drifted in towards the launch site from the south. However, right now, we're 95% go for launch in terms of weather conditions, only a 5% chance of weather violations, but the most recent weather report indicates that everything is green and that the range is green at the moment for the final minutes of this countdown. Just to take you through the final minutes of the countdown again, we'll be moving about 4.5 minutes from now into a planned built-in 10-minute hold at the T-minus 10-minute mark at about 6:55 a.m. Eastern Time. During that 10-minute hold, there will be a final poll for readiness to proceed with the final countdown. Flight Director Emily Nelson here in the Mission Control Center in Houston at the Johnson Space Center already has polled her team of flight controllers, and the International Space Station is go for launch. The countdown will resume at the T-minus 10-minute mark at 7:04 and 52 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. About 3.5 minutes before launch, there will be an automatic command to initiate the auto sequence start for the terminal portion of the countdown, and liftoff is scheduled at 7:14 and 52 seconds a.m. Eastern Time at the start of a 5-minute window that is available for Antares to get off the pad today. Again, 9 minutes and 6-second journey for the Cygnus spacecraft to reach its preliminary orbit. Assuming a launch today and a successful insertion into orbit and the deployment of Cygnus's solar arrays, which will be initiated about an hour and a half after launch, everything will be on track for the arrival of Cygnus at the International Space Station on Tuesday morning in the wee hours, where Expedition 53 flight engineer Paolo Nespoli of the European Space Agency and Station Commander Randy Bresnik will be in the cupola of the station at the ready, operating the station's Canadarm2 robotic arm to reach out and capture Cygnus for its ground-controlled installation on the Earth-facing port of the Unity module of the International Space Station. Cygnus is scheduled to remain at the station and actually installed at Unity until December 3rd, when it will be unberthed again by ground controllers here at Mission Control in Houston. It will be maneuvered to the top side, or the space-facing side, of the Harmony module of the International Space Station for about 12 hours of data collection, GPS data and other navigational information that will be applicable to the future arrival of commercial crew vehicles that will be docking at international docking adapters at the Harmony module, or Node 2, if you will, of the International Space Station. The actual release of Cygnus from the robotic arm would be scheduled the following day on December 4th. And again, here with Amanda Davis, the Orbital ATK Director of Program Management. Amanda, so in that 9-minute period or so between liftoff and orbital insertion of Cygnus, if you could fill us in on some of the milestones we'll be listening to on the countdown loop from all of the launch controllers in Wallops, that would be interesting.
Okay, so the first thing, we have first stage burn that takes about 3.5 minutes, and then next we go into a coast phase. During that coast phase, we deploy the fairing that's been protecting Cygnus on its way up, and then the inner stage is also deployed. From there, we ignite stage 2, and that burns about 2.5 minutes, and then we have another coast period, and that's to equal out any rates, so we make sure that Cygnus is nice and steady before we deploy it, and that's the end of the Antares mission. And as you mentioned earlier, about an hour and a half later, we'll deploy the solar arrays.
Once again, you're looking at the fully fueled Antares rocket on the launch pad.
And launch team. I can confirm CD is holding it.
The countdown has entered a planned built-in 10-minute hold at the T-minus 10-minute mark.
At this time, we're going to perform a contingency operation. Here's our pre-burner low temperature abatement checklist, page 192. Step Tango 1, Ops 2, you're go to energize ME1 VPG EPV.
LC Ops 2, energizing main engine 1 VPG. Activate. Yes. Activated.
And I've got an activate time at 11:55:25. And Ops 2, be advised, we're looking for approximate 5-minute duration on that.
Ops 2 copies.
If all goes as planned, the launch control team that you're seeing there at the Range Control Center at Wallops will conduct a poll for their final readiness to proceed with the countdown. That should be underway about 7 minutes from now, where as the clock ticks, we're inside 19 minutes until T0, again 7:14 and 52 seconds Eastern Time is the opening of the 5-minute launch window. Well, we have a moment here. One question that's come into us over Twitter from Katrina. How are launch times determined, not just for Antares and Cygnus today, but for any vehicle flying to the International Space Station? The launch time is determined by the moment that the Earth's rotation carries the launch site into the plane or corridor of the space station's orbit. And the duration of that particular launch window, whether it's 5 minutes or an instantaneous launch window, as is the case with SpaceX vehicles, is determined by vehicle or booster performance to be able to reach that corridor, a very narrow corridor that's required to reach the space station at its orbital inclination of 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. Once again, we're in the final built-in 10-minute hold in this countdown. If all goes as planned, we will resume the countdown at 7:04 and 52 seconds at the T-minus 10-minute mark. Liftoff scheduled just inside 17 minutes from now.
Okay, launch team, NASA TD and admin, be advised we are not going to come out of this hold at the planned time, so we're going to continue our hold. NASA TD, I'll need you to hold the L clock at 12:04:52.
Copy all.
Launch team, we're going to retarget our T0 for the end of the window. I repeat, we're going to target our T0 for the end of the window at 12:19:51.
And LC admin, resume time canceled.
Copy that, admin.
This is Mission Control Houston. You are listening to the voice of Kurt Eberly, the Orbital ATK Launch Director at Wallops.
12:09:51 for the restart.
We have retargeted the T0 time to the end of the 5-minute window for today. A new T0 time of 7:19 and 51 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. A couple of boats were observed offshore, and they want to make sure, the Orbital ATK launch team wants to make sure that those boats are out of the area and that they pose no conflict to the flight path of the Antares rocket, which will arc out to the southeast of Launch Pad 0A. So again, a new T0 time, the very end of the launch window, the 5-minute launch window at 7:19 and 51 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, and we'll continue to monitor developments through the rest of the countdown. With the retargeting of a new T0 time of 7:19 and 51 seconds Eastern Time, that means that if we are to launch today, the countdown would resume at the T-minus 10-minute mark at 7:09 and 51 seconds.
Yes, I'll wait for your call on Tango 3.
Once again, the 5-minute window available for Antares to launch today is dictated by the vehicle performance as it heads uphill to reach the plane or the corridor of the space station's orbit for an arrival on Tuesday morning for capture and berthing to the Earth-facing port of the This is Mission Control Houston. Again, you're looking at Launch Pad 0A at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, carrying the acronym of MARS
CMD.
at Wallops Island, Virginia.
LC, this is CMD on countdown 1. Go ahead, CMD.
Yeah, I want to know if we're okay to go to internal power.
That's a firm.
Copy,
The
thanks.
countdown continues to proceed normally. All vehicle systems are in great shape with the Antares rocket and the Cygnus spacecraft that's housed in the fairing at the top of the 2-stage Antares rocket. We're 15.5 minutes away from the end of the launch window, and we have retargeted that time of 7:19 and 51 seconds Eastern Time for liftoff.
We're going to go ahead and retarget our T0 to the end of our window. That's going to extend our current hold to 12:09:51. And site control stand by for arming of TEL for rapid retract.
Site control copies.
Okay, site control, I'm going to give you step 417 here, arm tel for rapid retract.
Command sent and work.
And tel, I'll wait for your confirmation that we have arming of rapid retract.
Okay, tel copies.
This view in the Orbital ATK Flight Control Room, the Mission Control Center for Orbital ATK operations in Dulles, Virginia. And again, they will take over control of the flight of the SS Gene Cernan, for which the Cygnus resupply craft is named after. At the time of spacecraft separation, 9 minutes and 6 seconds after liftoff, which has been retargeted for the end of today's 5-minute window, 7:19 and 51 seconds.
Okay, launch team LC, countdown 1. I want to get a report on readiness for recalibration of engine pressure sensors, MES-1. Yeah, MES-1 on countdown 1.
Go ahead.
Yeah, MES-1, I want to just make sure you're ready for recal on our engine pressure sensors.
That's an affirm.
And EHS-1?
EHS is go.
Copy that. Ops-1, step 420, recalibrate engine pressure sensors.
Copy. Copy LC and work.
And LC, this is CMD on countdown 1.
Stand by, CMD.
Waiting 5 seconds. Sensors restored to flight.
Copy that. MES-1, confirm engine priming, MES, stand by. Let's go ahead and check 420. MES-1 I've already coordinated are not required. All priming steps are not required for our operation today. We'll go ahead and check 421. And CMD, go ahead.
Yeah, Cygnus is on internal power
now. On countdown.
Okay, copy that. 422. MES-1, go ahead.
LC MES-1.
Yeah, go ahead, MES-1.
Sorry, that was a call for me.
No, I just confirming that we already have our not required coordinated.
Copy.
12.5 minutes from the launch time at the end of the 5-minute window.
We will be resuming our CDT time at 12:09:52.
The plan is to pick up the countdown.
Proceed with final countdown.
The plan is to pick up the countdown at 7:09:51 seconds Eastern Time at the T-minus 10-minute mark, aiming for the very end of the 5-minute launch window.
TD's go.
TD is go. MES-1?
MES is go.
And GC?
GC is go.
And ACE?
ACE is go.
Mars?
Mars is go.
CMD?
CMD is go.
LD?
LD is go.
And OA?
Yeah, many thanks to everyone who worked so hard to make this 24-hour recycle possible. Keeping J.R. Thompson and Gene Cernan in our thoughts today. OA is go.
Copy that. Launch team is go to proceed with final countdown at T-minus 10 minutes.
LC, TEL on countdown.
Go, TEL.
TEL is armed.
Copy. We have TEL armed.
Just about a minute and a half away from picking up the count at the T-minus 10-minute mark. All launch positions at the Range Control Center at Wallops have polled go. Orbital ATK is go for launch, as is the flight control team here in Houston. Less than 30 seconds away from picking up the count at T-minus 10 minutes. The International Space Station, meanwhile, flying 251 miles above the Earth, just off the northern coast of New Guinea, in an orbital inclination from southwest to northeast. Once airborne, the Antares rocket actually will fly to the southeast of the launch pad on its typical inclination for orbital insertion of the Cygnus spacecraft 9 minutes and 6 seconds after launch.
Countdown has resumed. We'll check step 426. And launch team be advised, step 427 is not required for today's operation. Ops 1, you go for 428, enable stage 1 controller and ACS VDMs.
The countdown has resumed.
LC Ops 1, ACS VDMs.
Coming up on the 9.5 minute mark.
Copy that, Ops 1. Elect 1, verify ACS VDMs are enabled and nominal.
LC Elect 1, ACS VDMs enabled, voltage is nominal.
Okay, copy that. Ops 1, activate arm enable.
LC Ops 1, arm enable key rotated, indicator illuminated.
And Ops 1, we're going to reperform step Tango 1, energize ME1 VPG EPV.
Copy that. ME1 VPG activated.
Copy that. And Ops 1, you go to arm stage 1 controller ODM.
Stage 1 controller ODM armed.
Less than 9 minutes until launch. Everything continuing to proceed on track for a launch at the very end of the 5-minute window for today.
ODM 10-volt regulators. Go. And yes. Set.
And Ops 2, initialize ground ordnance power supplies.
Ops 2 copies. Configuring ground ordnance power supplies. Go. And yes. Steps initialized.
Copy Ops 2. Elect 1, verify ground ordnance power supplies initialized and nominal.
TC Elect 1, ground ordnance power supplies nominal.
Copy that. Site control, I'll wait for your confirmation on GN2 conditioning. And MES1, I'll wait for your call on the low temperature abatement results.
LC copy. MES copy.
GN2 conditioning initiated.
Launch team be advised, 436 is not required for today's operation. 437 is not required for today's operation, and 438 is not required for today's operation.
Coming up on the 7.5 minute mark until launch, about 4 minutes away from the initiation of the auto sequencing start for the terminal portion of today's countdown.
GN2 condition. GN2 condition. Copy that. So check 435. Promptly, I'll wait for your call on activation of VTSO.
All orbital ATK positions are still go for launch. Coming up on the 7-minute mark.
441, not required. 442, not required. 443, not required. And MES1, be advised, I'll still be looking for a call on step 444, FIB position status.
All Antares systems are go for launch. All Cygnus systems are go for launch at the 6.5 minute mark until T0.
FIB position on FIB position.
And LC copy VTSO activation.
Copy. FIB is nominal.
Okay, I copy VTSO activation. I'll check 440. And I copy. We have FIB position nominal. Check 444. 445 is not required for today's operation. And site control, I'll look for your confirmation. We have AFBA ECS transferred from air to GN2.
Inside 6 minutes now until launch.
Transfer to GN2.
All systems remain on track. Everything is go. Coming up on the 5-minute mark until launch, all the loops very quiet, everything proceeding normally.
LC MES 1, countdown 1.
Go ahead, Mess.
Tango 3, abatement successful.
Copy that. And Ops 1, you can de-energize ME1 VPG EPV.
LC Ops 1 copies, VPG deactivated.
And Ops 1, you can transfer avionics to internal power.
In work. All internal power on, waiting 5 seconds. All external power off, step complete.
Copy 447. Elect 1, report avionics internal power status.
LC Elect 1, internal power nominal.
Roger. Ops 1, open FTS umbi loop and verify green indication.
LC Ops 1, FTS umbi loop open and green.
FTS, report FTLU status.
LC FTLU and FTS receiver indications are nominal.
Copy that. Ops 1, send all arm command.
LC Ops 1, all arm command sent.
Elect 1, report SNAs and ODM status.
LC Elect 1, SNAs, ODMs, all armed.
Copy that.
You're listening to the conversations at the Range Control Center at Wallops Island, Virginia, at the Wallops Flight Facility. We are now inside 4 minutes until launch.
Copy that. And Ops 2, mode SIGI to navigate.
And yes, SIGI and nav.
And GNC1, report SIGI status.
LC GNC1, SIGI nav, mode nominal.
Roger. Copy that. Check all steps through 456 complete.
T-minus 3.5 minutes until launch. Standing by for the initiation of the auto sequence start for the terminal portion of the countdown.
Will be active at T-minus 3 minutes.
Verified mission time set to minus 180 at T-minus 3 minutes, 10 seconds.
Mark, 3 minutes until launch.
Copy. Auto sequence start.
Control is transferred to CSOE.
Copy. We have control to CSOE.
ODM bus voltages and currents nominal.
Roger that. Elect 1.
VTSO is open.
Copy. VTSO open.
All of the launch pad functions now in control of this automatic sequencing. Everything is green. The range is green. 2 minutes and 18 seconds until launch.
Charging. And we'll be at T-minus 2 minutes on my mark. Mark.
2 minutes and counting.
EHS actuator slew test initiated.
Copy. Slew test. And we'll be at T-minus 1 minute 30 seconds on my mark. Mark.
Everything continues to proceed normally. Antares and Cygnus are both go for launch.
Preliminary.
1 minute, 20 seconds until liftoff.
Copy. Balloon MOX tank press. T-minus 1 minute on my mark. Mark.
Preliminary fuel tank pressurization has started.
Copy. We have prelim fuel tank press start.
T-minus 40 seconds and counting.
T-minus 30 seconds. Mark.
T-minus 20 seconds, standing by for engine ignition sequencing.
T-minus 10 seconds. And mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have ignition.
Liftoff confirmed. Antares and the SS Gene Cernan now bound for the International Space Station. Arcing out to the southeast, approaching the 1-minute mark into flight.
We've throttled back up to full power, 100% operation. T plus 1 minute, we're through max Q, attitude remains nominal. All main engine parameters look good at this point.
Core pressures are nominal.
Core pressures remain nominal. Attitude looks nominal, very modest steering through max Q.
Antares now passing through the area of maximum dynamic pressure on the vehicle. Everything looking great. 1 minute, 35 seconds into the flight.
Still operating nominally at 100% power. Attitude remains good. All vehicle avionics and power systems are nominal at this point.
Less than 2 minutes to go in first stage performance.
Operating at 100% thrust.
Core pressures are nominal.
Core pressures look good. T plus 2 minutes. TVC and attitude remain nominal at this point. Very little TVC steering.
This animation generated by real-time telemetry from Orbital ATK, 2 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight.
GNC attitude is nominal.
Core pressures are nominal.
Core pressures are nominal. Roughly 1 minute for main engine cutoff. T plus 230. Power systems still look good. Engine still at full power. We've started the slow throttle ramp to maintain axial acceleration limits.
Approaching the 3-minute mark into the flight, about 30 seconds of powered flight on the first stage remaining.
We've now throttled back to 55% power. Roughly 30 seconds from MECO. Power systems are good. TVC position adjusted for shutdown. Attitude remains nominal.
3 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Standing by for main engine cutoff on the first stage.
Main engine still look good. Attitude is nominal. And we have MECO, main engine cutoff on stage 1. PSS is disabled. We have stage 1 separation.
Stage 1 separation coming with Antares at an altitude of 67 miles, velocity of almost 9,000 miles an hour.
Getting some telemetry dropouts.
About 10 seconds away from fairing separation. Coming up on the 5-minute mark into the flight, everything continues to proceed normally. As you can see, the upper stage of the Cygnus, of the Antares rocket has ignited. Stage 2 burnout and orbital insertion, the initial orbital insertion, scheduled at the 7 minutes, 6 second mark into the flight. 2 minutes later, Cygnus will separate from the upper stage. 5 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Everything looking right down the pike as Antares is delivering the Cygnus resupply craft and 7,400 pounds of supplies and science experiments, beginning a 2-day journey to the International Space Station. Liftoff occurring at the end of the 5-minute window today at 7:19 and 51 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. Everything, all the parameters and the attitude of the upper stage, all in line, everything looking great at the 6-minute mark. About 60 seconds to go in the operation of the second stage of the Antares rocket. Good stage 2 attitude reported from the Range Control Center at Wallops. The upper stage roll control system performing as advertised at the 6-minute 45-second mark into the flight. About 10 seconds until stage 2 burnout. And the upper stage now has completed its job for the day. Cygnus now at an altitude of 121 miles, moving almost 17,000 miles an hour. In its preliminary orbit, spacecraft separation is scheduled about a minute and a half from now. Eight minutes into the flight, everything looking great. We're in a coast phase right now. Spacecraft separation is scheduled less than a minute from now. Eight minutes, 30 seconds into the flight. A true course so far for the Cygnus resupply craft. Orbital ATK delivering a perfect launch so far. Liftoff time once again came at the end of the 5-minute window at 7:19 and 51 seconds a.m. Eastern Time. We're standing by for spacecraft separation. Spacecraft separation now confirmed. The Antares upper stage is in a collision avoidance maneuver to make sure that it is well away from Cygnus. Cygnus now, the SS Gene Cernan, in its preliminary orbit, beginning a 2-day trek to the International Space Station after a flawless launch from Pad 0A at the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport at Wallops Island, Virginia. And as you can see in the Range Control Center, handshakes all the way around as Orbital ATK has delivered successfully the Cygnus resupply craft to its preliminary orbit. It took 9 minutes and 6 seconds for Cygnus to reach its preliminary orbit. The two-stage Antares rocket lifting off at 7:19 and 51 seconds a.m. Eastern Time at the end of the 5-minute window available today on this, the second launch attempt following yesterday's scrub. This is Mission Control Houston. You are looking at the Orbital ATK Mission Control Center in Dulles, Virginia. It's all theirs now for the next 2 days until we move into joint operations with this team, with the flight control team here in Houston, as Cygnus will arrive in the neighborhood of the International Space Station. With us here on console in Houston, Amanda Davis, the Orbital ATK Director of Program Management. And Amanda, from this point on, in the early phase of Cygnus's trek through low Earth orbit, what will this flight control team in Dulles now be doing over the course of the next few hours?
So the first thing this team will do, will start to power up all the systems on Cygnus and check them out. So now that the launch vehicle team is completed their work for today, this team now gets to take over and start doing their initial checkouts. And they'll be checking out all telemetry, the health and status, and about an hour and a half from now we'll have the solar array deployment, and then they'll start checking to make sure those are collecting the power from the sun and start charging up the batteries on Cygnus.
And as Amanda mentioned, that solar array deploy comes in a two-stage fashion. It will begin at about the 1 hour 30-minute mark into the flight. The planned start of the solar array deploy will be in the neighborhood of about 7:48 a.m. Central Time, 8:48 a.m. Eastern Time. Should take about 30 minutes to complete, and we will be resuming our coverage at 7:45 a.m. Central, 8:45 a.m. Eastern Time to bring you all of that activity as Cygnus begins its journey to deliver 7,400 pounds of supplies and science experiments to the International Space Station. And so with that, we'll wrap up our coverage of the first phase of today's activities, the flawless launch of the SS Gene Cernan, the Cygnus resupply craft that lifted off at 7:19 and 51 seconds a.m. Eastern Time from Wallops Island, Virginia. The Antares rocket, operated by Orbital ATK, lifted off, arced out to the southeast from the launch site in a perfect 9-minute and 6-second delivery of Cygnus to its preliminary orbit. As mentioned a moment ago, we will be back on the air a little over an hour from now at 7:45 a.m. Central Time, 8:45 a.m. Eastern Time, to bring you the deployment of Cygnus's solar arrays as it begins its journey to the International Space Station and an arrival for grapple and installation on the Earth-facing port of the Unity module on Tuesday morning. For now, we'll wrap up our coverage. This is Mission Control Houston.
introduce myself! Exclamation.
EBC is nominal. T plus 90 seconds, attitude remains nominal.